Best Wines Online tasting room. Again, dignitaries gracing us with their presence. Well, humble guy, but let's see. Let's talk about Buty, B-U-T-Y, and it is pronounced Buty.
Yes, it is Nina Buty's last name,
Yes.
and she founded the winery back in 2000. So that is where it comes from.
Right on. Chris, you know, my first experience with Buty wines was a few years back, maybe about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because I don't think before then there's probably enough sold, you know, that got down here, right, from a distribution standpoint. So the first time we saw the wines down here was about 3-4 years ago. And I remember, you know, because Washington has this reputation for fabulous red wines, you know, these great Bordeaux-inspired style wines. The blends have it, as you guys do at the winery out at the Cabernet and such. And I'll be damned, I was tasting through a lineup of wines, and it was like, Chardonnay, holy crap! I mean, literally the greatest Chardonnay I ever had from the state of Washington. And the red wines, they were good, but it was like I was obsessing on the Chardonnay. And then I come to find out today when I was talking to you earlier that, in fact, the Buty's putting, you know, white wines on the same level as red wines with regards to how they work. Can you tell a little more about that?
That's true. One of the early focuses, and we've done both these wines since the 2000 vintage, was to put an equal emphasis, which was a little bit strange back then in Washington. There was still a lot of, shall we say, $12 and under wines coming out of the state. A lot of Riesling, a lot of straight Semillon, tank fermented, that kind of thing. But people were just kind of waking up to whites. Woodward Canyon had done some wonderful ones. Le Col had done some wonderful white wines. And both those happened to be around Walla Walla. And so when we go in looking at these wines, we are really trying to preserve what we get out of the vineyard, out of the vines, out of what's coming from that area and that type of wine. So our white Bordeaux and our Chardonnay, both of them we handle fairly similarly in that we ferment them half to 2/3 in concrete fermenters. Mm-hmm. Big cube concrete with maybe 8 to 12-inch walls that really absorb a lot of heat. Little nice long cool fermentation on the main core of each blend, and then the rest in predominantly neutral barrels, not a lot of new oak. We balance the level of malolactic for the acid for this vintage, try and keep a good spine of acid in these fruit-driven wines.
What's the Bordeaux blend is kick butt too, and you know, but mostly Semillons. What's the secret behind that?
Well, Washington Semillon produces a very rich, aromatic wine that we were always in love with. And when you take a cooler site like we get from closer to Yakima Valley, and then some older vine Semillon from Wallach Slope up in a much warmer area, and blend those, you really can get that core piece that we blend around. You've got a lot of good acidity and mineral, but also a lot of that honey, almost fig and tropical richness. And then you bring in a little bit of zippy Sauv Blanc, not so much into the gooseberry, but a little more spicy and zippy like that. And then the very floral muscadel, which was a grape we searched for quite some time in Washington. We've been making this wine since 2000, and in 07 was the first year we had any muscadel. We know of 2 vineyards in Washington that have muscadel. One of them goes into, we'll say a nameless, very large, very, very large winery in the state.
How large?
As large as it gets. But but we have another grower that we met that had an acre, and we went out there, tasted it, looked at the vines, and said, we want this whole acre. And he was very happy to oblige to us. So,
what, are you crazy? What are you doing?
It's a very fickle grape, and it can throw a very small crop, not always the most fruitful one, and so he was very happy to have someone that wanted to use it every year, and we've worked really well with him. So.
Yeah, sure, whatever, buddy. You come and pick it up. Great. The phenomenal wine, actually, really killer.
Great.
And the Chardonnay, of course, it's a single vineyard Chardonnay.
Yes, it is, and it's one of the few things we do at Buty that is one grape, one vineyard. But we always look at that wine as a blend as well, because we're actually using 2 different blocks of Chardonnay. One is planted back in '89, and it's whatever traditional clone they had in Washington. We really don't have any tracking on that. And then we've brought in a newer clone that we planted back in '05 for this wine that brings a little more broader character, and we've really loved blending them together. We do actually both on Semillon and Chardonnay, a little bit of skin contact, somewhere from 24 to 70 hours we'll spend on skins after crushing, and then drain off the juice and keep that separate from the stuff that's pressed from there. And we do a little bit of whole cluster, obviously, then concrete fermentation, barrel fermentation, and then we have all these pieces to work with at the end to blend together. So I always feel like that's a blend as well.
When you talk about all these pieces, though, it sounds like you're making a lot of wine. We got this, and we got this, and da-da-da. I'm reading the back, there's 18 barrels. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's approximately, 25 cases in a barrel, huh?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we...
not very much.
We traditionally do, around 300 cases.
300 cases. So we're talking micro vinifications.
Yeah, we're less than 5,000 cases total with Buty.
Right.
And we split that over, 2 whites and 4 reds, plus a couple of little beast wines that we do through their tasting room, so...
Dude, that's kicktail wine. And before we finish up, I do want to talk a little bit about red wine because they are damn fine red wines too. The specifically, I want to talk about this bad boy because there's been a lot of action, a lot of stuff happening with Walla Walla and the rocks and the stones and Syrah and that kind of deal. So what's the deal with the Rediviva?
The Rediviva, the stones. Going back to a step back, the Columbia Rediviva was a ship that they named the Columbia River after. Captain Gray came down the river, and that is kind of where we went with one of our other blends of Cabernet and Syrah. And then on this one, we really knew that when we worked in the rocks from early days with Syrah, it was an animal all of its own. It gives characters like no other site in Washington. These are rocks that are river rocks, cobblestones, shaped from small nugget to football size. And they go down 100 feet in most of the areas in this little fan area elevation slope downhill of rocks that used to be the Walla Walla River before it moved around.
100 feet?
Yeah, we have well records that as they dig, they give you a report at each level and it just says gravel, 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 gravel.
75 feet, more gravel. 80 feet, gravel.
We need a new tip, gravel. So we actually, you plant out here with a bar and you wedge the grapevine into the ground, and then you get the drippers going. And then you've got these roots that stay kind of up top and feed off those drippers, and then the rest shoots straight down. We have some, 5-year-old fruit that we've dug pits 10 feet down, and they were already down to 8 feet. So just amazing characters in Syrah you get out of the rocks. In the rocks, the Syrah is the big gun. The Cab comes in and brings a lot of prettiness, but the Syrah gives you more savory characters, more spices, more floral, more of that kind of character that you don't see when people ask, what fruit is this? It's not blackberry, it's not cherry, it's different. And so it's one of the most distinctive appellations around in Washington, definitely. Well, it's actually just across the border in Oregon, but in the Walla Walla Valley, shall I say.
And it's going to be an appellation shortly, right? Is that the deal?
Yeah, they're on the final stages. They've got it all approved and everything.
And what's it going to be called?
That is one of the final stages. But it's looking like maybe the rocks of Milton Freewater, which is kind of a mouthful. But
Where do you put on the label? It's saying the rocks of Milton Freewater.
So,
but for anybody that's ever tried some of these wines, some of these Syrah-based wines for Washington State, particularly from this terroir, because there's a lot of Syrah in Washington, up in the Columbia Valley, a lot of other spots. These birds are unique. If you taste the wines from Rain Man or Cayuse or whatever, but there's a little different spin here. I love the focus, I love the balance, I love the energy in the wine, and the fact that it's almost like, because a lot of people talk about equating this to Northern Rhone or something, Côte Rôtie, Hermitage, and there's a little note of that, but to me it's more have like a Southern France type vibe. It's more exotic, more garrigue, what they call a garrigue character with the lavender and the herbs and that savory, peppery thing. My gosh, this wine's like a trip.
And I've always been a big fan of fruit, so I like bringing in the characters that are in there that aren't just the pure mineral-driven characters. So it's a lot of fun to make, and just astounding wines usually. You bring them in, and the characters start showing immediately in the fermenter.
Well, you know what? It's a lot of fun to drink, but you probably already know that.
Yeah, I might have had some.
Maybe some.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, hey, thanks for swinging by. I know you got to run. You got a busy day out there in the field, and thanks for taking the time to to talk shop with us, because I think these are really important wines for Washington State. We really appreciate you coming by and sharing them
Well,
with us.
great. Well, I'm glad that you can get to see them down here in California too.
Right on, game on. All right, cheers.